Watching the Olympics, summer or winter, you see all kinds of different athletes: speed skaters, 100-meter sprinters, gymnasts. It's hard to say, though, what sport produces the best athletes since it's somewhat subjective. So we asked NPR's Jonathan Lambert to take a look at the science to help answer that question. Here now, that conversation. Welcome back, John.
Good to be back.
All right.
So I want to turn this question to you.
Ooh.
What sport do you think produces the best athlete?
As much as I would love to say marathon running, I gotta, for me, a sport where you're fighting for your life, like boxer or MMA fighter.
Yeah.
That's me. I mean, getting punched in the face and then still being able to.
Yeah, that's a good argument. I want to disagree because science offers a somewhat objective answer to this question.
Ooh, okay.
And that's cross-country skiing.
Cross-country skiing. Why that sport?
So cross-country skiers have to work really hard. They're often skiing uphill, and they just need big aerobic engines to do that. Their heart and lungs have to work really hard. And the sport just produces like stellar athletes. And the science actually backs me up on this point. There's this metric that kind of captures aerobic capacity that scientists measure. It's called VO2 max.
VO2 max.
Yes.
Everyone is talking about VO2 max. Yeah.
And if you look at the lists of what kind of athletes have the best VO2 max, cross-country skiers consistently rank on top.
Yeah, because when I watch these running videos, I watch a ton of like running influencers, and they're always talking about VO2 max. And I'm looking at myself, I'm like, I don't know. Am I doing this right?
Yeah.
So tell us what VO2 max is.
So VO2 max, the V stands for volume, O2 stands for oxygen. And it's basically a number that reflects how good your body is at using oxygen. So to back up, our cells need oxygen to produce energy. But for really short bursts of exercise, something like sprinting a 100-meter dash all out, your cells can do that without using oxygen. But they max out pretty quickly, and the longer you go, they need to be replenished with oxygen. And so for endurance sports, the more oxygen that you can take in and that your cells can use, the harder you can go. And so VO2 kind of essentially captures that. It captures how good you are at breathing in oxygen, transporting that oxygen to your lungs, to the arteries, to the capillaries, down to the cells, and how good those cells are at taking that oxygen and converting it into energy.
So the size of your engine inside, or
yes.
the power that...
Yeah.
So
that's a good way to think about it.
Cross-country skiers, then, do they have the highest volume of VO2 max that they produce?
They do tend to have the highest VO2 maxes. And VO2 max isn't the end-all, be-all. It's not as though the best cross-country skiers have the highest VO2 max. Strength and technique kind of dictate how much of that aerobic power you can translate into forward movement. So if you've got like a huge engine, but you're just kind of like flailing around out there, you're not going to be able to go very fast. But the aerobic engine still matters a lot.
So how's it measured?
So basically, the way to measure it is to get on a treadmill or a stationary bike and go all out for like 10 minutes while you're hooked up to this mask that measures oxygen in and carbon dioxide out. And scientists have been kind of measuring athletes for decades to see kind of how different sports stack up against each other. And cross-country skiers consistently come out on top with very high VO2 maxes.
Now, when it comes to other athletes, because I'm sure other athletes would be raising their hand saying, excuse me, what about me?
Yeah.
What about some of the other athletes?
Yeah, there are
VO2 maxes?
There are cyclists and runners and rowers too, but pound for both men and women, cross-country skiers are overrepresented at the top of these lists for a somewhat obscure winter sport like cross-country skiing.
So what makes them so special then?
So it's a good question. It comes down to basically how hard they're working all four of their limbs. So they really are just like working their arms with their poles, working their legs with their skis, and that makes kind of what drives their VO2 max so high.
So, okay, you just said arms and legs and how they're using them. That makes me think that Michael Phelps or any swimmer would rank pretty high on the VO2 max list.
That's true. So swimmers are using all their limbs, but they're horizontal, whereas cross-country skiers are vertical. And so cross-country skiers have to pump all that blood to all their limbs and work against gravity. Whereas if you're a swimmer, you're working those limbs hard, but it's just easier for the blood to move horizontally because they're not fighting gravity. And for other upright sports like running, you're moving your arms, but they're not really working that hard. And like biking, they're just stationary.
Yeah.
So let's watch a video to illustrate this point.
All right.
So you can see here Jessie Diggins, an absolutely incredible skier from my home state of Minnesota. She's just going all out. She's like working those arms, double poling,
Yeah, wow.
pushing her legs. It's like, it's super hard. And she collapses here at the end of the race. I actually grew up cross-country skiing.
Did you really? Wow.
And doing track and cross-country in the warmer months. And at the end of a cross-country skiing race, you just feel like totally spent in a way that's different than running races. And there are, at the end of ski races, a lot of collapsed athletes because it's just so tough.
Yeah, it looks absolutely brutal. Like the worst thing you could put your body through. All right, so do cross-country skiers then naturally have a super high VO2 max capacity, or is it just maybe because of what they do and practice it all the time?
Yeah, there might be some self-selection, like people with high VO2 maxes get drawn to endurance sports, but you can definitely improve your VO2 max over time. And I think skiing is such a good way of doing that because you're really working all four of your limbs, and it's just a great way to boost that aerobic capacity. Your heart gets stronger. You actually grow more capillaries in your muscle cells to deliver that oxygen more. And over time, skiing is just a great way to make that whole system more efficient.
All right, so this definitely applies to elite athletes like we see in the Olympics. And as I mentioned earlier, it's on all of my websites and advice videos. I mean, it's all about VO2 max, but I'm not an Olympic athlete. I know I may appear, Jonathan, to be an Olympic athlete, but no, nowhere near it. So, I mean, for anybody that's thinking about this and saying, well, should I measure it myself? I'm a weekend runner, or maybe I'm a weekend warrior. Is that something relevant for them?
It could be relevant. There's been a slew of studies in recent years that find this link between longevity and VO2 max. And that's kind of led to maybe a lot of hype around the idea that if you train to boost your VO2 max, you'll be setting yourself up to live longer. And you can measure this yourself. Some smartwatches have ways of measuring it, and there are like online fitness calculators that you can use to get an estimate. Those aren't as good as the treadmill tests, but it's a start.
All right, so if I want to increase my VO2 max, how do I go about doing that?
So basically exercise. But one point that I'd like to make, and I talked to Stephen Seiler, who's an exercise physiologist at the University of Agder in Norway, about this question of like whether it's good to, whether everyday athletes should be kind of like honing in on their VO2 max. He said that there is some truth to the idea that boosting your VO2 max is likely a good way to live healthier and longer. But he casts doubt on the idea that hyper-focusing on the number itself is the best way to do it. A lot of those studies that found that link in normal people, not like super athletes, but just normal folks, they were using not that treadmill test to measure the VO2 max, but just general fitness metrics. And that suggests that like just focusing on boosting your overall fitness and running your normal running route a little faster than you did last year is probably a better way to go about it than getting hyper-focused on the number itself. The big take-home point is that boosting aerobic fitness is a good way to live healthier, and cross-country skiing might be an especially good way to do that if you're lucky enough to live where there's snow.
I live in LA.
Yeah.
So much for that.
You can roller ski, but
it's
not as much fun.
That's NPR's Jonathan Lambert. Jonathan, thanks.
Thank you.